Welcome to the public involvement presentation for the Shoreline Management Plan revision at Lake Texoma. Public and stakeholder involvement is critical to the success of the Shoreline Management Plan revision. As the country is responding to the COVID-19 outbreak, public meetings and workshops which accompany a Shoreline Management Plan revision are all canceled. The presentation you are viewing is the alternative to the Corps hosting face-to-face public meetings or workshops. Thank you for taking the time to participate. The purpose of this presentation is to inform the public and stakeholders that the Shoreline Management Plan Revision Draft Report is complete and available for review for Lake Texoma. This presentation will define a Shoreline Management Plan, describe the Shoreline Management Plan revision process, present the primary changes in the plan from the 1996 plan, provide instructions on how to participate in the process, and encourage participation. It will also provide links to documents and details about how to contact the Corps to ask questions. The information provided through public and stakeholder comments is essential to the decision-making process during the development of the Shoreline Management Plan. The Corps wants your ideas and comments. After watching this presentation, review the other material on the project website and send in comments and participate in the Shoreline Management Plan revision process at Lake Texoma. The Shoreline Management Plan, or also referred to as an SMP, is the Corps of Engineers document that establishes policies and sets guidelines by which the Corps manages certain private uses of public lands and waters along the shoreline of water resource projects. At Lake Texoma, those uses and activities generally include private docks and boathouses, as well as vegetation modification, including mowing and removal of certain woody plants at the boundary line, and pedestrian trails. To aid in understanding shoreline management with the Corps, a brief history of milestones is provided. In the 1950s and 60s, the Corps had few rules to govern the use of shoreline activities at water resource projects. In 1974, as a part of Title 36 of the Code of Federal Regulations, formal rules were first published related to shoreline management. The Corps references Engineering Regulation 1130-2-406 to guide the implementation of rules set out in Title 36. In the late 1980s, public law changed the rules, allowing docks to remain indefinitely if maintained as long as they were in a non-restricted area. The last Shoreline Management Plan published at Lake Texoma was in 1996. Currently, there are 657 permitted docks and 782 vegetation modification permits at Lake Texoma. The revision process for the Texoma Shoreline Management Plan is summarized in this chart. The public and stakeholder participation process began on the 29th and 30th of January 2020, when the Corps hosted two public meetings to announce and introduce the Shoreline Management Plan revision. During those meetings, the Corps was available to meet and answer questions regarding the revision process and encourage public and stakeholder participation. Following that meeting, the Corps reviewed all the comments received and developed the draft Shoreline Management Plan document. We are currently in the agency and public review phase of the project, which is highlighted by the yellow star on the chart. Following the 30-day comment period, the Corps will review the comments received and finalize the plan. Adoption of the final Shoreline Management Plan will occur after approval by the Southwest Division Commander. As noted on the previous slide, agency and public scoping meetings took place in late January 2020. The January 29 meeting in Pottsboro, Texas, had 176 individuals attend, while the January 30 meeting in Kingston, Oklahoma, had 156 individuals attend. A total of 56 comments were received during the comment period. A summary of the comments is included in the appendix of the Shoreline Management Plan document. The Shoreline Management Plan revision is changing the 1996 SMP. The highlights and primary changes are listed under these categories. A detailed summary of the changes is available for review in the appendix of the report. Each category will be briefly summarized on the following slides. ER 1130-2-406 is the regulation that guides the development and implementation of shoreline management at Corps projects. Changes to the ER since the publication of the 1996 SMP were addressed in this revision, including the administration, transfer and termination of permits, dock removal replacement, prohibited facilities, flotation requirements, and response times. Most of the changes were minor and were implemented administratively as they became effective. The district commander can make minor administrative changes without implementing a public involvement process. This table summarizes the shoreline allocation changes from the 1996 plan to the proposed 2020 Shoreline Management Plan. Prohibited access areas decreased by 0.87 miles. Protected shoreline areas increased by 119.99 miles. Limited development areas increased by 4.99 miles. Public recreation areas decreased by 26.7 miles. Aesthetic areas and restricted areas are not considered shoreline allocations in the current regulations, and those areas were reclassified to primarily protected shoreline area. Shoreline allocation changes were needed to reflect the land classification changes in the master plan. The increase in limited development areas was not the outcome of adding new limited development areas, but was simply the result of improved technology and measuring devices and software that allow the precise measurement of the zone footage within individual shoreline allocations versus the technology used in 1996. In certain coves, the limited development area's zone footage was reduced due to the following reasons: insufficient water depth, protection from excessive wind fetch, and extreme unsafe topography terrain of the adjacent shoreline. The SMP contains a series of maps in the appendix that illustrate the shoreline allocation designation for all of Lake Texoma. The allocations are identified at the shoreline using color coding to show the four possible allocations, including limited development, prohibited, protected, and public recreation areas. This map is an example of the large-scale mapping that shows the entire project on 15 map sheets. A second set of shoreline allocation maps highlight the cove details with a focus on the limited development areas. The smaller scale maps allow private floating facilities to be seen within a designated LDA. Geographic coordinates indicate the terminus points of each LDA. The primary management concern in regards to public recreation areas is to provide sites suitable for quality recreational experiences. Recreation areas are developed for several uses, including general public use, quasi-public leases, private club sites, and for commercial concessions. All designated public recreation areas will not permit any new shoreline use permits. Permits in good standing located in quasi-public and private club sites recreational areas will be grandfathered, with the floating facilities belonging to the lessee being managed under the terms of the real estate agreement. Vegetation modification will not be permitted in public recreation areas, except in areas operated under a real estate lease or license in accordance with the terms of the lease or license. Private floating facilities, or PFFs, include privately owned boat docks, platforms, breakwaters, and buoys. Changes to the administration of PFFs include prohibiting new mooring buoys, legal access requirements, setting minimum design standards for PFFs, including size, slip length and width, and square footage of platform docks. Applicants for shoreline use permit must show proof of legal access to fee-owned government land. Ownership is restricted to a maximum of 2 slips in any dock and may not own interest in more than 1 dock on the lake per family household, defined as an individual or individuals living at the same address. A family household may have only one of the 2 following options. 1. Ownership of a single owner dock with up to 2 slips, or 2. Ownership of 1 or 2 slips in a multi-owner dock. In situations where construction repair of a PFF occurs on public land, a special activity permit will be required. The anchorage of private floating facilities under the revised SMP specifies pencil anchors are the preferred method, which allow the facility to rise and lower with changing lake levels on steel pipes that are driven into the lake bottom and attached to the PFF by a collar assembly. It is prohibited unless on a case-by-case basis to use stiff arm anchorage or other shoreline obstructive cables and concrete deadmen anchorage. The system of anchorage cannot render any portion of a cove non-navigable or create any hazards to navigation regardless of lake elevation. Changes associated with walkways and stairs includes the requirement to have a licensed structural engineer sign and stamp PFF plans showing handrail construction details. On a limited basis, stairways can be authorized if the lake manager verifies no safe, viable alternatives exist to access a permitted dock. All stairways require a real estate instrument, and no part of the stairway may extend over the lake at conservation pool elevation of 617 NGVD. Construction of stairways must be of metal or concrete and meet the standards stated in EM 385-1-1. Existing stairways, tramways, must be certified by a licensed structural engineer with certification submitted to the lake manager prior to renewal of the license. On a case-by-case basis, modifications of existing stairways for ADA compliance will be considered. Stairways that are abandoned are subject to removal per Title 36. Regarding vegetation alterations, the revised Shoreline Management Plan describes that trees may be trimmed no more than 1/3 of their total height, not to exceed 8 feet from the base of any tree, and only within the permitted mow area. Vegetation control cannot include the use of herbicides. No living tree, brush, or shrub with a base diameter of 2 inches or larger will be cut. Flowering trees and shrubs will not be removed. Only after issuance of a permit will cutting or removal of trees be allowed. Any tree to be cut must be marked by a USACE representative. Dead trees that pose a safety hazard may be cut after approval from the lake manager. Felled trees will remain on the project lands, and the sale of any tree that is cut is prohibited. Defacing vegetation, rocks, and other natural material is prohibited. The grandfather clause applies to structures or activities authorized by a previous policy and prior permit which is no longer authorized by current policy. Grandfathered structures that are authorized for relocation from their documented site must meet all the standards now in effect and are no longer in protected status. New owners of grandfathered facilities will be issued a new permit. Failure to comply with the terms of permit may result in the permit being revoked. Damaged structures that are no longer floating or usable must be rebuilt in accordance with the minimum design standards for a new private floating facility. However, if general upkeep and maintenance of the facility will not affect the substructure, then it may be repaired. Additional slips added to the docks must conform to the general requirements and minimum design standards. The summary of the buoys and breakwater changes includes requiring the submittal of a detailed letter of request to the lake manager from the PFF owner desiring the protective buoy. Upon approval of the request, a shoreline use permit will be issued to the individual or groups responsible for permitting the installation of the U.S. Coast Guard standard buoy. All expenses for the purchase, installation, and maintenance of the buoy is at the expense of the permittee. The Corps is required to coordinate approval concurrence with the respective state agencies that are responsible for enforcement. Breakwater applications are submitted to the lake manager, which require a letter of request, completed shoreline use application, detailed site map with GPS coordinates, and detailed engineering stamped design drawings of the structure. Changes to electrical power and lighting are summarized to include not issuing any new utility licenses across government property as per the 2009 non-recreational outgrant policy. Solar power, generators, and other means are recommended as alternative energy sources. Applicants must submit a detailed plan to the lake manager for approval. All existing electric lines on government property must be buried except where the terrain will not allow as determined by the lake manager. No overhead lines will be allowed. Consideration will be given to the possible environmental damage that might occur as a result of burial. In these instances, the electric lines must be encased in conduit that is approved by the NEC. Overhead lines on government flowage easements are required to meet special vertical clearance requirements. Speak with the project office for more details. Light fixtures must be shielded to reduce glare from lights for adjacent residences and boaters. USACE encourages adhering to the best management practices referred to as Dark Skies Initiative to reduce sky glow. You can participate in the process by reviewing the documents available on the Corps website and submit written comments. The Corps will only accept comments in written format. The Corps website is hosting all the documents relevant to the Shoreline Management Plan revision, including historical Shoreline Management Plan documents, project maps, comment forms with instructions on how to submit a comment, and copies of this presentation for your review. As the project progresses and new information is developed, it will be posted to the Corps website, so you may want to bookmark this site for future reference. We are asking for your help to spread the word to others, letting them know the draft Shoreline Management Plan revision document is completed, and this is the opportunity to participate in the process. The Corps can accept any form of written comment, and we have provided a few methods that may make it easier to submit. A comment form has been prepared and is available on the website, which you can download and fill out electronically. Hit the Submit button on the form, and it will autofill the email address and you can send it in. Another method is to print the comment form provided on the website and fill it out by hand or electronically and mail it into the Corps. Or you can write a comment in a letter or email and send it in. You don't have to use the comment form. We will accept all of these methods and any other as long as it's a written comment. The comment period is open for 30 days from the initial announcement. If you have questions regarding the master plan, please call or email the following Corps Project Office or district staff. You can also send questions to the email address set up for this project as listed on this slide. If you need to review a printed copy of the information, please contact the Lake office to make your request. Public notification for scoping initiated on 29 and 30 January 2020. The 30-day comment period, when written comments were accepted, remained open until 2 March 2020. The draft document is available for public review starting on 2 December 2020, followed by a 30-day public comment period. The final approved Shoreline Management Plan and EA is scheduled for March 2021. Thank you for viewing this presentation and participating in the Shoreline Management Plan revision process at Lake Texoma. Project documents are available at this website. Please send your comments to the email address or Lake Texoma office address listed here. Thank you.